We'll call the meeting to order.
Sean Lucas,
Here.
Justin Orff,
Here.
Jared Giddens,
Here.
Aaron Peterson,
Here.
Darlene Graham,
Here.
Amy Hookstrack.
Here.
Please join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. All right, we'll move on to the visitor section. Do we have any visitors, Becca?
Eric Harsky,
Hi, my name is Eric Harsky. I've been a member of the Nixa community for 25 years, since 1997, Nixa graduating class of 2001. My wife, Corinne, recently participated in the local election. She didn't win, but both her and the incumbent ran excellent campaigns, and it's my understanding that the incumbent is an excellent representative. I want to thank the incumbent for hanging out with Corinne at the junior high on Election Day, and congratulations on the victory. I'm here today, however, to inform the council of a serious issue pertaining to an inappropriate social media post made by an elected official. This post was made a day before the election. With elective office comes an elevated public platform. The official used their elevated platform to conduct reckless and dangerous behavior. The most egregious violation that I want to inform the council of is that this official explicitly posted the home addresses of the candidates that were being publicly smeared in the post. The platform could have easily been used to issue a positive, supportive message about the candidates the official liked. Instead, the elevated platform was used to post an extremely negative, highly inflammatory, divisive message against the candidates not liked. Given the elevated public platform, coupled with the nasty nature of the content and the explicit listing of home addresses, the official created what I would articulate as a political hit list. I asked the council today a couple of questions. Number one, how is this okay? Number two, is this the expected professional behavior of someone who holds elective office in our city? And number three, and a fair question, is this behavior in violation of the moral code of conduct accepted by those who take the oath of office, specifically the moral turpitude clause? Moral turpitude refers to an act or behavior that gravely violates the sentiment or accepted standard of the community. Creating a political hit list is 100% an ethical and moral failure, in my opinion. It gets worse, folks. A concerned citizen pointed out to this official that if people were to show up to the official's house or the homes of the candidates whose addresses were posted, this would be a major law enforcement situation. To which the official replied, and I quote, "I have a very impressive security system at my house." This unprofessional and childish dialogue demonstrated a complete inability to comprehend the seriousness of this behavior. There was no consideration for those not afforded the luxury of a security system of which this official brags. Furthermore, if a situation were to occur, I think the city would now be liable for injuries or damages. There's only two conclusions to come to when analyzing this, and I'm not sure which is worse. Either the official lacks the intellectual capacity, the wherewithal, the common sense to know that they should have redacted those addresses without having to be told, or they knew they should not include the addresses but did so anyway. So I'm asking the question, which is worse, not knowing or doing so anyway? If it's not knowing, I'd argue the official does not possess the critical thinking skills necessary to be an effective leader and effective decision maker for the city of Nixa. To me, it would clearly indicate they lack the intellectual talent required. Now, if it's the latter, doing so anyway, this would indicate malicious intent and still point to insufficient decision-making skills. The post not only inaccurately smeared candidates right before an election, but also deprived them the ability to defend themselves on the same public platform, as the candidates were prohibited from replying. This behavior embarrassed and humiliated the entire city of Nixa as well, because it was public to everyone. Those from other communities were astonished by the low-quality post and were embarrassed for our city. I need to point out that certain chosen ones were afforded the ability to partake in this highly public discourse. One of the chosen is a current council member. The comment from this member was to suggest that the political hit list was missing a name. The council member literally suggested an additional name to be added. Extremely unprofessional, embarrassing behavior, in my opinion. The post seemed to be a poor attempt at settling a political score. One issue was a $16,000 election recall. To add perspective, the city budgets $25,000, that's $9,000 more, for Christmas lights. Not only is it less expensive, but it's a more important function of government to allow citizens an avenue of accountability for elected officials than to decorate the city. And I would be surprised to know if the council disagrees with that. Furthermore, the liability for injuries or damages resulting from the creation of a political hit list could be astronomical. In conclusion, I hope the council considers addressing my questions. And finally, but I'm sure you know, this post was made by the mayor, Mr. Brian Steele. Thank you for your time. I can stick around for questions. I have a packet with supporting material if anybody wants it, and this speech.
Thank you very much. Have anyone else?
Ron Sanders.
Hi, my name is Ron Sanders. I live at 976 Glen Oaks Drive. I've been in front of the city council countless times saying that exact same thing because up until recently it was required. Up until this moment, my address is public on that post. Now, it is required to file publicly with the Missouri Ethics Commission if you're involved in politics, which means everybody's name's out there. And not only that, there are the white pages. There's everybody's profiles. You can spend $10 and get a subscription to search anybody's name and address and find out what age they are, what birthday they have. So everything's public. But in our society, it's essential that we use our common sense and we use a little bit of restraint whenever it comes to having that information. And although right now I don't think that the city of Nixa has any citizens that are really going to come to my house and start any stuff, I do think that highly of our citizens. Putting people's names out there to intimidate them, to cause a stir. The first thing that you would expect a wife to say, to the husband is, why would you let that happen? I'm glad my wife didn't see it that way. I'm glad that a lot of other people didn't see it that way either. And they're focusing the issue at the person that caused all of this. And about the recall. The recall happened a while ago, I think 6 months ago or something like that. It's over. We've paid for it. You won, Mr. Mayor, okay? You won a recall. You can't be recalled again. Heck, you could do all of this stuff, and there's not very much that the city council or anybody could do to you. So right now, no matter how bad this situation is, you're beyond reproach. And if anybody questions me or my intentions in this city, I just want to say this. There is a sitting city council member, where I've had well over 25 people come to me and say, how do we recall this individual? Maybe my count's too low. I don't know. There are a lot of people that have asked, okay? And I've had to tell them that the city council member hasn't done anything to be recalled for. That's why there hasn't been a petition. That's why there hasn't been people coming in here asking how to do it. Because I honor what I said a while back before the recall and everything else, is that I'm not going to let it get out of hand, and I'm not going to let people go crazy recalling this and recalling that. I've held up to my end of being civil, and whenever I spoke those words here publicly, I meant them. Now, the rest of y'all here on the city council, y'all have an issue to take a look at, because what's coming behind me is a bunch of very angry people and who were directly affected. But think about the thousands or even the hundreds of other people who are negatively affected, who will never come to this podium because of that action, who will never, ever want to speak publicly or interact with this city council because they know that they have somebody in this government that will just take their names and publish it. And it gets worse. I've had people tell me that they have been contacted and questioned about why they signed the recall petition. You want to talk about classless and baseless? Getting that public knowledge and then reaching out to them to ask them why they did that is horrible. And it's just going to send a message to everybody in this city. If you do what Ron Sanders did, you're going to feel the wrath of the power that people have. I ain't worried about it. I got thick skin. Okay, everybody knows where my house is, and ain't nobody come there yet. And if they do come, we'll have a cold beverage or a hot beverage, and we'll talk, either out front or in the back around the fire. Okay? Because I think that's what kind of city we live in. Thank you.
Anybody else back?
Jeff Belcher.
Okay, I've been gone for a while. Apparently I've been missed. People are wondering where I am, why I'm not on the recall list. I got a question too. Why did I not make the recall list? I'm the one that brought the whole damn thing up. I started it. How come I didn't make the list, Mr. Mayor?
That's Mr. Sanders.
It's your list.
It was Mr.
It's
Sanders'
your
list.
hit list.
No, it's Mr. Sanders' list.
No, it's your hit list.
No.
You posted it, you
can ask
had
Mr.
intent behind
You
it,
can ask Mr. Sanders.
and your
It was-
intent was clear, crystal
It
clear.
was Mr. Sanders' list.
So you don't want to answer then? I didn't know even,
It's not my list, it's Mr. Sanders' list.
well, this whole recallers, that's the first time I've seen that as an actual term. Again, it's 6 months old. Get over it, you won. Just bear in mind, we did have over 800 votes to get your ass tossed. How many did you have to win office? 700. So not bad for a grassroots movement. We're learning as we go. And reading your post here, be sure to do your research before you vote and make sure these people actually agree with your beliefs. It's a hell of a nod to that Nixa public school system. I believe it was, you got your verbiages incorrect there. Anyhow, your big beef and a lot of your friends and cronies' belief is that it just cost the city $16,000 whole dollars. First off, that's our right to initiate a recall. Your actions allowed us to initiate a recall. We followed the rules, we followed the law, and so the recall was held. That's our money, not yours. Same with the $12,000 that was supposed to be powder coating the power poles there at Main and 14 because it just didn't look very attractive. That money was passed over a year ago. Why are our poles still galvanized bare metal? I ask you where that money went. Darlene, I've seen you posted in response to the same questions here that you and Justin are just great, and you have always responded to your constituents. Both of you. She used your name. Would you agree with that? You respond to your constituents?
I try to.
Do you recall October of 20 when I reached out to you? You had no idea who I was. I had never been to a council meeting. I had no idea about politics in the city at all. I called you and I called Darlene. I found out you were both my representatives because prior to that I had no idea. I never heard back from you, ever. Darlene, you did have the courtesy. You called me back. You addressed a lot of my concerns. But however, to come out and suggest that I haven't been to a council meeting since the recall election. Okay, I didn't know that was a qualification requirement. Oh, that's kind of the way it came across. kind of slinging mud a little bit, you know, well, he hasn't been here, so.
No, all I said
He
was
should
that
be
you
a little
hadn't
more
been to a
involved.
meeting, and if you were interested in being on city council, that you probably should be at one of the meetings, that you should have been coming to the meetings. Corinne came to every single one of them.
Okay, well, I ask you this. I think I saw Amy at a total of 3, maybe 4 meetings prior to her election. Is she qualified? Did she attend enough meetings?
I have nothing to do with Amy.
Okay, okay. On that note, I know things get tough. You guys have been asked twice already tonight. Respond to what the mayor did. Everybody wants to sit on their thumbs and circle the wagons, and we'll just play dumb. We'll act like we didn't hear the people. We didn't hear their questions. So, I'm down to 40 seconds here. This may be dropping a bomb on your little bandwagon you got circled around here, but like I said, October 2020, I had no give a damn about city politics. I didn't know what a recall was. I didn't know what our home charter was. All this information came from Darlene Graham herself, instructing me to go to our home charter, and it's spelled out in there crystal clear, the recall process. So when y'all want to whine and cry about the $16,000 that was spent, maybe instead of pointing fingers at the recallers, this whole idea came from your bench. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Belcher.
Sandy Carnes.
My name is Sandy Carnes. I'm a resident of Nixa, Missouri. I do not need to provide my street address, as Brian Still chose to dox some of the citizens of Nixa, and that included me. I do not follow Brian Still, nor are we friends on Facebook. So when I was told that I and other Nixa residents had been doxed, I wanted to understand what that meant. I have learned a new word this week. Here's the definition: to publicly identify or publish private information about someone, especially as a form of punishment or revenge. Personal information about a person, for example, their real name, home address, phone number, that has been released on the web, usually used to harass or shame the person. To search for and publish or identify information about a particular individual on the internet, typically with malicious intent. The link Brian Still provided on his post is public information from the Missouri Ethics Commission website. It is to look at candidates and committee information to find who has given financial support. The problem is how the link was used, the intent. The very big problem I see is that Brian Still maliciously placed the link on his personal Facebook page so that his friends of Nixa would see who contributed to a Republican PAC that was put together by a Nixa resident he has a personal vendetta against. We have a phrase in our home: perception is reality. As a wife, mother, female, and citizen of Nixa, Missouri, my perception is Brian Still intentionally did what was described above. It was a malicious intent to harass me and others, to punish and to pursue revenge. Brian Still, you have stated that your personal home address was revealed during your mayoral recall. You stated that the action was unacceptable. You revealed you had to purchase a high-tech security system. Now, what should we do? Do we need to purchase a high-tech security system because you purposely revealed our addresses? Aren't your actions unacceptable as well? I hope the Nixa businesses that were doxxed are not hurt by a mayor who's supposed to be supporting the businesses of Nixa, not promoting cancel culture. The Nixa City Employee Handbook talks about being a steward of public trust, enhanced quality of life, serving with honesty and integrity, and committed to working together with our neighbors to maintain a friendly, small-town atmosphere. I assume you read and agreed to everything written in the Employee Handbook. Do you believe you are meeting these standards? I remind you that you are called to be a servant of public trust. You say that's not acceptable, and then you do it yourself. I say watch what people do, not what they say. Your actions are showing you believe you are above the citizens of Nixa and the employees of the city. Let me finish with, I will not be shamed for getting behind candidates I believe in. I will not be shamed or bullied for standing up for my rights and beliefs as a citizen of the United States or as a resident of Nixa. Ephesians 4:32, forgive each other just as God forgave you. Brian Still, I forgive you for publishing my address and putting my family in danger.
Bridget, I'm sorry, I'm going to say your name wrong. Bidinger?
Hi, my name's Bridget Bidinger. Each and every one of you are elected officials to one of the key pillars of this community. Some of you are elected by a segment of households, one of you by all Nixa households, but regardless, each and every one of you should consider yourself an advocate for all Nixa residents, not just a favored minority group or insider club, but all Nixa residents. Now I stand before you, elected to office in another pillar of this community. This despite the disappointing and unbecoming actions of two of you sitting before me who made every attempt to derail my campaign. I have been a Nixa resident and taxpayer for 8 years. In that time, my household has poured tens of thousands of dollars into the Nixa community in one way or another. I have volunteered in this community. I have 2 young daughters who are growing up in this community and in our school system. We are doing life in Nixa. That said, instead of reaching out to me, asking to have dialogue on important issues which we may disagree, your platforms were used to launch a smear campaign. Derogatory labels were inferred about me, factually incorrect statements were made, and my address was even made public, even with the knowledge of my 2 young daughters. The hypocrisy of it all is that it goes against the very claim that you as a group are trying to make, that you want to support diverse perspectives and ideas, that you want to ensure Nixa is all-inclusive. Yet in reality, the actions displayed the past few months conveyed the opposite to those watching. If you are honest, your focus is on immutable characteristics, not diverse thought. The support is only for candidates who are already in the good old boys club, not those you labeled outsiders. Don't get me wrong, as individuals, you have every right to support candidates of your choosing, but as elected officials, it is extremely unethical to use your platform to disparage those with which you disagree. Partiality to those which you have never met personally, particularly those which you have never met personally. When I launched my campaign, I provided 3 different ways to contact me. Only one member sitting before me reached out. Thank you, Jared. The 2 that chose to attack me from behind a screen did not reach out to discuss any issue or question that they had. Your actions lacked moral turpitude, leadership, and self-discipline. Well, let me assure everybody in this room, in my role as a Nixa school board member, I will be serving each and every student, teacher, parent, and taxpayer. And if an issue does arise, I will have the courage and fortitude to reach out to you directly. Why? Because you deserve better than what I was afforded, and I will hold myself to a higher standard. I am not going to live in fear that my address was posted, for I serve a God who protects me. Beyond my 4 members of my household, I also have Smith, Wesson, Glock, Remington, Beretta, and probably something else. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, that's all we have for this evening. If anyone else would like to speak, they can do so at this time. Sure, go ahead, Andy.
Andy, when you're done, if you could stop by Cindy and fill out one of those cards for
Sorry,
me.
guys. I try to stay quiet. I try. Just so everybody knows, did you dox 4 people last week? Just for the record?
Andy, I'm not going to answer a string of questions. If you want to make a statement, and then I will speak afterwards.
So do I have to protest outside here with your Facebook post on a board or something like that? If I need to? Protest every day? That's my right, right? I'm just very frustrated. I know there's tensions and stuff. I know you're frustrated with the recall and everything, but there's real frustration out here. And just so Nixa knows, the lady who spoke behind me got more votes than any Nixa school board member that we just voted for. And you doxed her publicly, sir. Is this the best Nixa can do? Is our mayor doxing folks? Are you still gonna run for the 139 House seat in Jeff City? After all this? Is this the best Nixa can do, guys? Really? Seriously? I think we had a Republic council member call you out and friends of yours saying it was wrong. I haven't told even Ron this, but I'm so frustrated. I want to move from Nixa. I'm just, this is like the first time I've ever said it. And I'm just tired of all this stuff and everything, and, people being called out, and there's frustration everywhere, and good, honest people. You guys are good people, and you guys will not condemn what this guy did. Are you not a grandparent or a dad or a father? Really? So when you, go for the 139 House seat, we're going to have, members of all your friends, businesses and stuff, have signs again. We're going to go through the whole darn thing again and vote for you again like nothing happened. Is this the best of Nixa of 23,000 people we can send to Jeff City to represent us? This guy right here? Are you kidding me? Nobody else? Why won't you answer that you publicly doxed four people? Everybody knows that you did it, right? Everybody saw it. Why won't you answer that? So do you have any remorse for what you did? Do you think you did anything wrong?
So I'd speak as soon as you get done, Andy. I'll be happy to reply to your comments.
What frustrates me more than anything is the group might not behind me might not agree. I think you're a decent guy, but I think you're screwed up, and there is a good old boys club in the city. It is real. I've seen it. And they're not bad folks either way, but folks, I'm sorry. It's just, when the mayor of a city doxes four people, that's just wrong. Folks in this city need to have the courage to come out and say it was wrong. And we don't need you representing us in Jeff City, period. There's somebody else who has the courage to run. You know what I'm saying? I'm sorry. Just have a great day.
Thank you, Mr. Davis.
Andy, can you fill out the speaker card for me?
Anybody else?
My name is Jack Carnes, and I had no intentions of speaking. But after listening to everybody so far, Mr. Mayor, you're nothing but a bully. You're just one big bully, and you're an embarrassment to this city. You really are. I'm fed up. I'm ready like Andy. I'm not so sure I want to stay. And the rest of you, following right behind him, because nobody's got any backbone. I don't know what's going on here in this city. We used to be a great city. I'm starting to think differently now. But you're an embarrassment. And any apology from this point forward falls on deaf ears, because you didn't have what it takes to step up and apologize before this. Yeah, it was my wife, that's right, and 3 other people who I respect greatly. I used to have some respect for you, but it just continues to snowball. Just snowball down the hill. And the rest of you. We're an embarrassment to the rest of this community, Springfield, Southwest Missouri. I've heard from some friends around here. What the heck is going on in Nixa? I said, I really don't know. That's all I got to say. Embarrassment.
Thank you, Mr. Carnes. Anybody else? All right, we'll close the visitor section. Oh, yes, ma'am.
Hi, my name is Jasmine Hillman, and my mother and father have already spoke before me, and I was not intending to speak, but I thought I might as well get up here. I do not need to share my address as it has already been shared. I do attend Nixa High School, and going to Nixa since 5th grade, I was excited to go to Nixa High School. Hearing from my sister's experience, Nixa was so great. Now, I'm not sure I can say the same thing. Being a female, a young female, and living in this city, you would think I would be safe because this is a small city, or it's supposed to be. When my address is publicly shared and I have to go home in fear, wondering if someone is following behind me, like today, coming home from the gym, I took an extra way around to get to my house. Have I shared this with my parents? No. Do I do this frequently? Yes. I go an extra block around my house to make sure that no one is following me. I should not have to do that. This is Nixa, Missouri. I should not have to do that. Yet here I am, having to do that. Mayor Steele, I know you have a daughter. She graduated not very long ago. How would you feel if your daughter had to do that? Now, you say you have a really good security system. Not all of us can afford to do that. Now, how would you feel if you knew that your daughter had to go an extra block around to your house just to feel safe, that she is not being followed? I know that some of you other guys have children or grandchildren, or even sisters and brothers. No one likes doing that. This is America. This is supposed to be a safe place. This is supposed to be Nixa, Missouri. When you think Nixa, you're supposed to think safe, small, and quaint. I do not think that anymore. As I am graduating, I am sad to say that I'm glad that I will be moving 2 hours away to go to college. I should not have to say that. And I can say that I'm glad that my parents are thinking about moving, because I am fed up, like my mom, like my dad, like so many others at Nixa. Going to Nixa High School and seeing every day what this city has turned into, I'm not happy. And I am sad for the people who will follow after me and wish that they could have gone to Nixa High School 10 years ago, but they don't get to. So as you sit up there and don't do anything, think about people like me. Think about the kids who actually have to live here and grow up here and go an extra block just to get to their house safely. Thank you. Jasmine, do you mind to fill out one of those cards for me?
All right. There's no one else. We will close visitor section. Yeah, somebody commented about our education system. I did not know what the definition of doxed was. I saw that on someplace, but I was unaware of that word. But as Ms. Kearns had said, it's the showing of private information. The post, I think, that everyone's commenting about was a picture of a document that Mr. Sanders had filed with the MEC, as you're saying, which is to show, which several of you have said, is to show who supported individual candidates. And that was all I was calling out in that post, as I had messaged Corinne and Bridget and Mr. Miller as well, that it was not personally intended towards them. It was intended towards Mr. Sanders' group. So Mr. Sanders continues to insult me, to insult this council, to call us liars, call us criminals, and I think calling out people, right? You had your time to speak, I get my time to speak.
No, you're lying. I have not said anything, a lie about you since the recall. I haven't even spoken about you. But you're gonna sit up there and try to disparage me while I'm sitting here? No. Anybody can go and see all of my posts and know that all I did was find a few candidates and help them run. And I never said anything bad about you or any of the other candidates. And then you're gonna sit up there and say that while I'm sitting here? No, sir. No.
As you even said after the recall, so you definitely lied before the recall. You also had multiple posts where you were disparaging, and they're not necessarily under your name, they're under pages that you represent, and that was one of the other things that I was disturbed about, is you have a page called Republicans of Christian County, and you call your PAC Republicans of Christian County, as if every other member in that election wasn't also a Republican, but it was just a non-partisan election. So you're trying to twist people's words, as you continue to do, twist people's ideas and try to confuse people in a way to get them to do the things you think they should do, instead of just being honest about it. And that's what I was trying to do, is I was trying to let everyone know, and actually not everyone know, that was my private page. What you saw was screenshots that were posted in a group that I don't have access to, that I am not allowed to see, that I'm not allowed to comment on. And so you saw posts that friends of mine, who maybe are also friends of yours, had posted and taken from my private page. So I didn't use any of my public pages for that purpose. I just put it on my private page, wanted my friends to know that information regarding candidates that Mr. Sanders was supporting and the things that he had done, and I thought that was quite a fine thing to do. That it was public information that was out there. As soon as someone commented, as soon as one of the candidates asked about the addresses, most of them were said unknown to begin with, and I don't believe that the Carnes' address was even on the post that I had. I think it was just, it did have Mr. Sanders' address on it, and then it had, everyone else's was redacted out, so. But again,
After the fact.
within a couple of minutes. So as I gave everyone an opportunity to speak. It's now my opportunity to speak. Mr. Belcher asked about the Main Street poles. We are going to get those poles as soon as the highway widening is completed. We have the money budgeted for that, so we're excited to get that going. Why he wasn't on the list is because he wasn't one of the members that was on Mr. Sanders, that was backed up by Mr. Sanders' PAC. And so the only thing I was doing was listing Mr. Sanders' PAC and commenting that these were the people that were supported by that PAC. I think all of them had commented back to me and said, we didn't receive any money, we just received these flyers. And so I posted that also as an edit to the comment, saying that they didn't receive money, they just received the flyers. So again, Mr. Sanders and I have a political disagreement. And so he posts often about me, and I'm sure he will be in the future. To be totally honest, Mr. Carnes is also the treasurer for my opponent in the 139th. So he definitely has a specific point of view on these issues. So again, I did not mean any harm to you or any of your families. As soon as I realized your addresses were on there, redacted that information off of there, even though it was public information to begin with. But
The link is still there, though, so can you please remove the link?
the link,
Because it's still there.
is it on my page?
Yes, it is. So please remove it, because
Sure.
our family's still in danger.
Sure, I will be happy to take the link off of there.
Did you not raise hell last year when your public name and address was made public?
My name and address are very
They
public.
had no regard when you made that post.
No, I definitely understand. My life was threatened, my daughter's life was threatened by people associated to the recall, and so I understand more than anyone else what that means, and so I'm very questioned about that.
You did it anyway.
Okay. Sorry. Excuse me, if you could, from the audience, there's people online that can't hear your comments, so if we could keep the comments down from the audience. And
As I said, it wasn't anything personal to the candidates. I was just trying to show candidates that Mr. Sanders' PAC was supporting, and it was a comment against that, and that's pretty much all I got to say about that. All right, we'll move on to the next thing. All right.
Maybe if you answered these questions when the speakers are at the podium, then it would be audible for the audience. Would that be appropriate?
I think I commented on everyone's. I think I commented. They're all going to be mostly the same, so I just commented on all of them at the end to save time.
Still no apology.
All right, we'll move on. I feel there's no reason to apologize. Mr. Sanders supported those candidates. I said that he supported them, and people could use that information as they wished. All right, we'll move on to our presentation.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Before Brian comes up to make the presentation, I just wanted to kind of give a little background of why we're bringing this to you and the timing and everything. About this time last year, we were in between utility billing supervisors, and I spent a lot of time over in the utility billing office. And it became apparent to me that we have an opportunity to make some improvements to our policies, with the intent being to clarify and to simplify and to give some more options for customer service. So when Brian Hawk was hired as utility billing supervisor, he came from another city, and I just gave him the task of, let's look at our policies, let's see if there's any way we can improve upon them. And so we've worked on this. He's worked very hard. He's done a lot of research and putting this all together. And so having said that, Brian, go ahead and come up here.
Okay, it is flexible. Good evening. First, I want to say thank you to Jimmy and Cindy and Jennifer for the collaboration on this to make this possible. A lot of the information that will be referenced throughout the slideshow. The slideshow is going to be mostly a high-level overview of what you received in the council packet. But a lot of what I'm going to be referencing is this spreadsheet that compares our neighboring communities in my suggestions. So the objectives really tonight are to clarify the language in our current policies. They were last updated, I think, over 5 years ago. We also want to define new deposit structures. We want to try and streamline these processes. And then we also want to expand opportunities. So these are the three things that I've identified as your three high overarching things to kind of address to not only streamline customer service, simplify language, and make it more understandable to the community, and then also make it to where we expand the opportunities to elevate our level of customer service as well. When we look forward, we see that the billing language that we have in the current policy, there was no defined language on when the billing actually occurs for utility billing. And I'll suggest some of these, I'll suggest some improvements later on in the slideshow on what that would mean as well. Currently, we have a late fee for past due payments of 5%, and I did a cross-reference over different communities on what their late fees would have been in comparison to us. I think it would bring it up to industry standard to raise that up to 10%. In address to the disconnect or the reconnect fees, some of that's going to be a language thing, as well as we're currently only charging $25 per utility service, as well as charging $25 an additional deposit, whatever the deposit would be, if it's a water deposit, electric deposit, to reconnect them until they reach a certain threshold. Some of those things can be reconsidered as well. And then the last thing, we go back to when I worked in Republic to now working here in the same municipality type setting. Payment plans for people who are struggling paying their utility bills. Utility, I feel, is a necessity. If you need, not necessarily explaining it as a handout, but an option. If you give them an option to delay a payment or give them a couple of days, whatever the case may be, it's extending a proverbial olive branch that not only makes, it provides an empathetic way to elevate the customer service. So the solutions that I propose in this is the very first one would be in the billing cycle stage, is that we would define these. We would dedicate 2 dates to eliminate the confusion, because right now the due dates, if you've ever heard any complaints, I can't imagine you all have heard complaints about utility billing at all. But if you have heard them, some of them could have been, I thought my due date should have been the 1st of the month, and it was the 2nd or the 3rd or the 4th, same thing in the middle of the month. If the bills get mailed out, we can't guarantee when Texas is going to mail them up to St. Louis and get them back to Springfield and back out to Nixa, and however many days the snow and the Pony Express and however long the mail takes and things like that. We can't say. And then you set down and roll the due date. That frustrates a customer when they can't set up a payment online. If they set it up for the 1st and the due date rolls to the 3rd or the 4th or the 5th, they're not paying their bills on time. they're late, or they're early and they didn't budget for it, things along that nature. So I'm proposing to set a 5th and a 20th solid due date. It would not only create accountability for me, because I would have to make sure my bills are out on time at a certain time each month. It doesn't give me any grace period to get that done. But it would also create transparency with the public to say that bills are due on the date that we now say is either the 5th or the 20th, based on what billing cycle you're in, and there's no argument about it. Same thing goes with the increase in the late fee. If you look at the spreadsheet, we see that Ozark, Willard, Springfield, Lebanon, Hollister, Carthage, Monette, and even Ozark Electric Co-op all share the same sentiment of the 10% late fee. It really is kind of a way to say, if you raise it, you're praying and hoping that it sends a message and says that people either need to pay their bills, or this is basically saying that we're keeping up with our neighboring communities, on top of we're trying to reduce the amount of people that are not paying. Let me back up a half step. This also supports us in the payment plan as well, because if we do one thing, if we say we're going to raise the late fee, but then also don't offer them a way out, almost proverbially a way out, then the late fee has no merit. So that's where, when we match up with all these neighboring communities, if we just say operating cost, if you say that, how long it takes to do any of those things. That will be in I think that part will be in a couple of slides. Keep jumping ahead of myself, I'm sorry. So part of the other solution that I'm offering is to update the language, to change certain verbiage, change the word fee to a service charge, and change it to a flat rate. Because currently right now in our disconnect process, you get charged $25 per utility service. I'm proposing to just change that to a flat $50 fee. That would be it's something that I could program our system to just go ahead and charge. One of the problems that I'll mention later is that it also makes it, the autonomy behind it makes it to where a lot less manual labor, basically, because if you think about the man hours to run a disconnect day, the money you save just allowing something to be automated in the system just pays for itself. The additional $25 for after hours, there are a certain number of customers, and I don't have the exact number because it's it's a couple of different people each month, but they will call after hours and report their power out, even though they were reconnected for non-payment. And they'll call and get it reconnected, and then we have to chase them down and chase our tails the next day to get them either to pay or to disconnect them again. So now we're adding more manpower, more man hours, and more money back into a process that could be automated. If we automate the $50, they have to pay that regardless. And that will then, I'm thinking long-term when we change something like this as well, because when we make it autonomous and make it automated that way, when we move forward into an AMI system, when we move forward into a new billing system, like where all these plates are spinning in the air at the same time. When that happens, now I'm thinking months down the road, but when you pay online, or if you pay at a kiosk or somewhere else on all these things that we're thinking about doing, your power is immediately turned back on within 30 minutes on the new system. So if I just start thinking now, we're planning ahead for the future with these suggestions. And then the payment plan, I'll show you a sample of what that means at the end. So along in the billing cycles, like I said before, to eliminate the floating due dates, let's suggest to dedicate to the 5th and the 20th. To eliminate the confusion, currently the customers cannot depend on when their bills may be due. The biggest push that I have for this is to move the beginning of the month back to the 5th, to aid those on Social Security income. They'll get paid on the 3rd. That way we help them not have to stress about this bill being due at the 1st. They have a couple of extra days built in to do that. And then it also provides reliability for auto pay. This says our due date won't roll. It's going to be the 1st because the 1st is the 1st, and we said it's the 1st. The only clarification to that is if the first is on a Sunday, it rolls to the next day, but the bank's not drafting your account on a Sunday, they're drafting it on Monday morning anyway. So here's the breakdown of the late fees. Currently, Nixa is sitting at 5%. The others at 5% are Branson and White River Electric. Currently, we assess after the bank deposit. So what that means is I wait until the mail gets here at 11:30, I go through all of the mail, and we process all the payments before I post the penalties in the afternoon. The proposal to changing that is to pull all of the payments out of the Dropbox at 5 o'clock, the day of the due date, mark those to be excluded, and then mark penalties the next day. The reason why I'm saying that is because we cannot depend on how fast the mail is going to get here. If I say we're going to wait until noon, you say you put it in the mail and you postmarked it, we're now chasing our tails waiting for a process that could have been automated. The neighbors that we have at a 10% late fee, like I said before, we've got Ozark, Willard, Springfield, Lebanon, Hollister, Carthage, Monette, and Ozark Electric. I called all of these municipalities and broke down all of their different options when it comes to deposits, late fees, reconnect charges, and even their payment arrangements for your reference as well. So this is the fun one to talk about. This is the disconnect fees. So currently, the process is $25 per service, and it's collected on the reconnect. So this is also a more frustrating part. When you don't charge it up front, you're now getting a frustrated customer calling back in, hey, I got cut off, hey, I can't afford this. Oh, hey, by the way, we want you to pay another $25 while they're on the phone with us. We can eliminate the frustration, not completely eliminate, but we can alleviate some of that frustration if we say, hey, we're gonna charge this up front. Now you know what you have to pay to get turned back on. There's zero gray area. It is black and white at that point. Because once we say that, we're also suggesting to not ask for an additional deposit. If I charge it up front, we're not asking for additional money on the back end. With one exception that's mentioned in there, and that's if you don't have a current deposit on your account. And that's just the liability part of it. The thing that is also not being charged right now is for any after-hours call-outs for people that call to get reconnected that have been disconnected for non-payment. The proposed changes is to change the language from a disconnect fee to a $50 service charge. And I could program our system currently. I haven't reached out to BSNA or anybody else that we work with, but I do know that Tyler is capable of automating these charges. So once we know who is going to be disconnected, I could click the button, program it, say this is the extra money that's on your account. It now reflects on your online account. You can pay it, IVR, it's all updated. That way they don't have to talk to us for us to calculate how much extra money they owe. It'll say it automatically, this is what they owe. And like I said, we plan further ahead for the AMI implementation that once they pay that bill, the payment sweep goes through on the electronic side and they get reconnected. So this is kind of a two-way, a double-edged sword. We're kind of trying to clarify the language now and plan ahead for what the new system is going to look like as well. One of the things to kind of add into that is to add the additional fee for those that call for after-hours service. I highlighted those on the reconnect part of that spreadsheet that there are other communities that do have after-hours rates that are significantly more than what I'm proposing. Did I go too far? Let's see. Yep, I went one too far. Okay, so the current deposit structure, I'm trying to simplify this only because I'm proposing to not ask for an additional deposit when you're disconnected for non-payment. And also prior, as you'll see in the policy suggestions, is that on the electric side, I won't jump ahead, I'm sorry. Let's start with the water. So currently, you're $20 inside and $30 outside for your deposit, and then you could be asked to pay an additional deposit if you get disconnected for non-payment. My proposal is kind of calculating that risk in on the front end with your deposit to not ask for an additional deposit on the back end. So when you think about that, now the proposal will be $50 inside, $75 outside. That is just, like I said, you're calculating in not taking it on the back end by assuming the risk on the front end. Same thing on the electric. The electric to me, and I've also I've conversed with Doug and Travis about this as well to try and simplify this. The electric side, there are differences in tenants and homeowners on the liability that we have with the amount that their bills are on that end. The homeowner with gas, without gas has different rates. My thought process behind that is the homeowner obviously would have a lot less liability to stiff you per se on a bill because they're going to be here longer than a tenant traditionally would be. A tenant traditionally has a 12 to 18 month lifespan, so their liability is a little bit higher, so their deposit should be a little bit higher right up front, and that's more of the simplification behind it, is to just say $100 for the homeowner and $250 for the tenants on the electric side. So that brings the total deposit currently that you have 70 for homeowners with gas, 220 without, 120 with tenants with gas, 220 without. But this is the kicker to why I'm proposing it this way, is you have an additional deposit that's required on the lower end, but you don't on the higher end deposit on the proposal side. So the total amount of deposit for a homeowner would be $150, and the total deposit for a tenant, this is if you have electric, water, it doesn't matter because their total deposit would be $300. So the payment plan proposal is where it comes into providing the options to the citizen. Now it's proposed in the language to let this be at the discretion of the city administrator or his designee, whoever he decides that to be. So these are not to exceed 3 months. The way these would be built out is in this right here, it would be the payment plus it would be their past due balance, their past due balance divided by 3, and then that plus their bill for 3 months to catch themselves up. That would be no additional deposit, this is just the black and white way of saying it, that if they fail to make the payment on the payment arrangement, they have one chance to speak with Jimmy or his designee to renegotiate that contract, or they get disconnected and the entire past due balance is then owed at that point. This gives customers a way to, and this doesn't have a balance threshold. If I need to create 6 month, 9 month for balance thresholds, for instance, if somebody gets behind on their bill and it's up around $1,000, obviously an extra, if you split that down, that's $325, $330 plus another $300 bill for 3 months. It's obviously not going to be feasible. So if we have to accommodate to that, the language gives the city administrator or their designee the ability to adapt to those things. And the one thing to really pay attention to in that is in 99.9% of the cases, if the customer misses a payment in that contract, that is basically them saying, we've already taken that extra chance with you, and now we understand we're going to get disconnected at that point because the payment plan was the proverbial olive branch that the utility office was able to offer at that point.
So is the service charge or the disconnect, reconnect fee, is that factored into the total amount, or does that have to be paid separately? So like say I owe $200 and I didn't pay and you guys are gonna shut it off, then they add the $50 service charge.
Correct.
Is that, now do I owe $250 or do I have to pay the service charge?
Well,
before?
what I'm proposing with the payment plan is to prevent you from being disconnected. So I want you to come in and set this up before we send you out to get disconnected. If you don't do that, then you're obviously incurring everything up to the point that you've set up the contract.
Can they do a payment plan after they've been disconnected?
Yeah, you would then be.
But it would add that $50 in
Right,
there.
well, the hope behind something like that is that you would get somebody to have some sort of payment of good faith towards it. So say, hey, you bring me $20, that's a way to say, I'm trying to pay my way down towards this. If you come in with nothing, it's a lot harder to negotiate something like that, obviously. But if you come in with good faith and say, hey, I've got $50, but I've got this much coming this week, then I can break it down that way, where your first payment might be the $50, and then you've got your other two. There's ways that I can spin these contracts to help out anybody that I can.
Perfect, thank you.
This is just the sample that I provided, the one 3-month.
Gotcha.
COVID really provided me to really wrap my brain around how to help people when I worked in Republic. We had a 3, 6, and 12-month because they didn't do disconnects during the entire span of COVID. So they had balances that were wrapping up, and this is just water and sewer for Republic. They didn't even have electric. So they had balances that were wrapping up into the thousands for just water and sewer. So by the time we decided we were going to come back and start the disconnect process, we've already used the ARPA funds and the rescue plan and all that, all the COVID relief and things like that at that point. But we had to now say, hey, from a legal standpoint, this is your plan to come back up with your part of the money. We've helped you ride along this far, so now you got to do your part. And that's where this comes into play from, was kind of spawned and motivated from things that I've done back there as well. And it had good success. I didn't have very many people that failed just on the water and sewer side. So just touching again on my 3 main areas of focus, we want to really pay attention to the policy language and make sure that that addresses the areas of concern. The deposit language, obviously, I want to be able to simplify it and define that process, and then obviously offer this payment plan as a way to say, hey, we're trying to have your back. Okay, any questions?
Any questions?
So, oh, you go.
I'll say a couple questions I had.
Yeah, of course.
Would be, how would you determine who pays on the 5th and who pays on the 20th?
It'll be from the dedicated cycles that are already established. So I'm taking the ones that are due at the beginning of the month, or the first, second, and third, and pushing them back to the 5th. And the same for the ones that are due at the 15th of the month, roughly around the 15th, I'm now pushing them back to the 20th.
Okay. And then, what did the upfront deposits go to? I know when I became a resident of town and I went and got my utilities, I had a $50 deposit I had to pay.
Of course.
I mean, is that still sitting on my account?
Yes.
At some point, maybe if I don't pay my bill, it's gonna reduce that down or something like
Well,
that?
we don't necessarily put it towards your balance unless you move out.
Okay.
That's not something that
So if I was
we
to
had
move,
conversations
if I was
about
to move,
that.
I'd get that money back, is
Yeah.
what you're saying? Okay.
So in a dire situation, so say you had a $1,000 bill and you've got $500 in deposits on your account, I could, in theory, talk to the city administrator and say, hey, can we apply this to help the customer out? And that's where, when we go back and look, that's where you could even cater a payment plan like this to apply the deposit to assist the customer out. There's 2 different schools of thought with a deposit applied payment plan. And I didn't include all these because I didn't want to muddy the waters. I just wanted it to be simple up front, and we could always talk about that at the back end. But in theory, the payment plan could apply the deposit, and then we could rebill it on the back end to help the customer out. It makes the payment plan a lot longer, but it helps the customer out.
Thank you.
We do have several programs to refund the deposit back already in place if you do like the direct withdrawal and those types of things.
Yes, yeah.
We got a lot of ways you can get your money back.
Okay.
What you got, Justin?
Yeah, I was gonna bring up the $50 service charge. I love what we're doing is like with streamlining and making everything automated. I think that's awesome. So I'd like to see that stay. I'm not a fan of increasing from the 25 to the 50, just because I don't want to punish people who are already in dire situations, and I feel like just the increase, even though they have plenty of options available to them, does just that. And so I'd be happy to keep it at the 25, just because I feel like
It's currently 75, right? Because
Well, it's 25%.
it'd be 3 times 25.
It's
you're paying
25
one
per,
for
are you
each.
talking about just the reconnect fee?
Yeah.
So it's 25 per service. I'm proposing to do 50 flat.
Okay.
So if you have water and electric for the services we reconnect, that's $50 anyway.
Okay.
So it's really only increasing for water only and electric only.
Gotcha.
So, but at that point, the reason why we do that is to try and get them to encourage the communication before it happens. We're trying to deter and trying to drive down the numbers.
Also, keep in mind that we removed the stipulation that they have to pay an additional deposit on Reconnect. So that is kind of saving some money there. So they pay the service fee, they don't have to pay an additional deposit. Because like you said, if you got your utilities shut off, you're kind of in a crisis situation, you don't have the money to pay your bill, you likely don't have an additional $200 to put as, towards a deposit. So we were thinking, pay the service fee because it does cost money and labor and time to do those disconnects and reconnects, but don't charge an additional deposit to sort of offset that.
Yeah, normally I think it's, people I tried to help in the past, it's like they have $150 extra on their bill, plus their bill that they have to pay.
Okay.
Which makes it very difficult.
Okay.
But this is just 50. I did a question about if you go back to the tenant deposits.
That one?
Yeah. It seems like we're going,
You're going up on the tenants because you're not asking for an additional deposit when they get disconnected. So if I look at the ratio of people that get disconnected for non-payment, you're gonna look at about 80% tenants versus 20% homeowners.
sure.
And keep in mind, the purpose of the deposit is to protect the city from holding bad debt. So people move out and leave owing the city money. We don't have an adequate deposit on file to offset that, then we're held with debt we have to write off because it's difficult to collect. And so this is our attempt to try to mitigate that risk.
Do you have information on how these proposed deposits compare to surrounding communities?
So in the spreadsheet, I did do a deposit breakdown of the surrounding communities on what they were able to provide me.
Okay.
Which one, it just depends on which ones you're
Well, I
really
was just
referring
curious,
to.
as to how, because I felt the same way the mayor did. I feel like that 300 is kind of high. And I totally understand the reasoning, and I do understand that a renter is a higher liability. But I don't know, just, when you're renting, you usually have to pay first and last month, plus a deposit just to move into the place. So then it seems like an additional $300. Utility deposit is a lot on top of that.
Of course, what we could do to something along those lines is if we leave it at this amount, there's ways to bill it out. There's ways to tell the system to bill it out. That could be $50 by 6 months or $100 by 3 months and things along that nature. If somebody's in that dire need, we could research and look at how to build in billing it out to them to help them out. Because if we're offering a payment plan, what's to say that we can't help them out on the front end? But then, I also play devil's advocate with the same breath that we rerun the liability if they skip town on us in the first couple of months and you didn't collect the entire deposit, then you just defeated the
Right.
purpose of it.
Right. I know in places I've lived before, there were considerations given, like if you had a really good credit score or if you had a record of good payment with your previous utility.
Of course, yeah, and that's
then
still
the deposit
that's
was
still a
waived.
thing.
Do we do that?
Yeah.
Okay.
If I have a 12-month good payment history, they're not even charged a deposit.
Okay. Okay. Well, that's good to know. Okay.
And then it's also the same thing on the disconnect process. If they sign up for ACH, they're not paying. Currently, if they sign up for ACH or debit withdrawal, automatic debit along those lines, they're not charged the additional deposit. That's their kind of safeguard.
Okay.
Currently, is sign up for one of our automatic payment methods that says, hey, it's going to try to avoid having to pay extra money.
Okay.
This way, it kind of just eliminates that, but it also increases it on the front end to reduce the liability.
Okay. Oh, I had one more question.
Of course.
You didn't talk about this in your presentation, but looking at what's in my packet, the part about if a customer's on 24-hour oxygen support, they can possibly get a waiver of disconnect. I'm wondering if that can be expanded a little bit. I know there are other You know, there's other medical equipment besides just oxygen that requires electricity, like CPAP machines and things like that. And I know there's some medication like insulin that has to be refrigerated. So I'm wondering if waivers could possibly be given in those instances as well.
I'm open. It's completely fine. That was just the one thing that wasn't written down, that we, during the disconnect, if somebody calls along those lines, it's, hey, do you have a battery backup? That's our only kind of ace in the hole right now for that. I really wanted it on paper that says that we're trying to protect them and be empathetic towards that population. So, yes, it's completely relevant to say, let's expand that to however many people it can apply to and help.
Okay.
And you had stated that it was the city administrator who would make the decision, or designee was,
On the payment plans?
yeah.
Yes.
Why was the city administrator selected rather than like yourself?
We can definitely edit that. That was just a way to say somebody above me taking my position out of the sole decision maker process. That somebody else looks at the situation and says, hey, this is what, either yes, I agree with it, yes, please go with it, no, don't do it. Here's option C, D, E, F, G, whatever, along those lines.
Yeah, I
Councilman
was
Peterson,
just wondering.
just to follow up on that a little bit, it's pretty much our routine practice anytime council is delegating any kind of administrative authority that is provided to the city administrator, and then the city administrator can attach additional requirements and provisions on how that authority is delegated. It's a way that council can exercise some control over that through the city administrator, which is one of the only appointed officials that council can appoint. That way we're not getting into a situation where we're violating the prohibition on interference that's also in the charter, if that makes some sense. So generally to respect the chain of command, so to speak, typical practice is to designate that to the chief administrative official, who can then delegate that as they deem appropriate.
Okay.
Anything else?
What do you think is going to be the best way to, I mean, because this is great. I'm really glad that you guys have put in the work for this, but what do you think the best way is going to be to get it out to the public? Because the education, honestly, is probably the biggest key part to this whole
So there's a couple of
thing.
different ways to skin that cat. We could do a separate mailer. We could put it on the back of the Bill News. We could do social media blast. We can, I mean, the possibilities are endless, all of it. Yeah, just say yes. Yeah.
All right.
Drew's on it.
Drew doesn't mind having plates added to spin. to
Nah,
jump
he's
back
got
and forth.
nothing going on.
It's awesome up there. Anything else? All right, what do we need to do next? Do we need to do anything else?
No, sir.
If you had any additional comments or you wanted to see something else change, please just let us know. Otherwise, we will be bringing this back at the next meeting for passage by resolution. So if there's,
Yeah, there'll actually be part was resolution and part will be by ordinance.
oh, okay.
So
Part by ordinance and
We'll
part
get
by
that, we'll
resolution.
Make
get
it
that
more
straightened out
complex.
before we come back, but.
Sounds
sorry.
good.
So yes, if you had any other input, or if you think of something when you know, the next few days, just let Brian or myself know, and we will incorporate that in before we bring it back to you.
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you for your time. Appreciate it.
All right, move on to our ordinance section. First reading 2022-041.
First reading, Council Bill 2022-041, an ordinance of the Council of the City of Nixa authorizing the city administrator to execute an agreement with several jurisdictions to facilitate the expansion of broadband high-speed internet services.
Mayor, Council, during the last council meeting, I brought forth an agreement to be able to partner with the neighboring organizations to look for a consultant, sorry, my mind went blank for a minute, to look for a consultant to do a feasibility study for broadband internet within our communities. And I mentioned during that last meeting that I would be coming back with another agreement to put in place what's called an RBI board. That's what this is before you tonight, is that agreement. Basically, what that is going to do is take one member from each organization that's involved in this project, and they'll be placed on a board. That board will then look at all of the RFP responses that we get from the consultants and basically make a decision on which one to move forward with. Now, at that point, just to make council aware that at that point, we'll have a better idea of what that actual feasibility study will cost us. Right now, it's just a kind of a guess because we've not done this large of a project before. So once we get those RFP responses back, the board will then select which consultant they would like to use. And at that point, I'll be coming back to council once again because we would have to do a budget amendment to be able to move forward. So just because this agreement does put in place that RBI board, it does not necessarily tie us down to moving forward with the feasibility study at this time. In other words, there's still an out. If we choose that we think it's not right for us, or it's more than we're willing to spend, or for whatever reason, council's not comfortable moving forward, at that point, we can remove ourselves from the board and basically just not take part in the feasibility study. If at that point we do decide, whatever that cost is, our percentage is 10.62% of that cost. So if it's, who knows, if it's $500,000, then, we're 50,000 or so, something like that. But we just don't know what those numbers are yet. So, but once we get there, we'll definitely bring that back. But again, this agreement tonight, all this does is place that board into a position where they can review these RFPs, make a decision on which consultant, and get a better idea of the price and how to move forward. So, be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions? Thank you very much.
Thanks.
We will open up the public hearing if you'd like to speak to this item. And we'll close the public hearing. Move on to second reading, 2022-01 or 031.
Second reading, Council Bill number 2022-031, an ordinance of the Council of the City of Nixa authorizing the mayor to execute a franchise agreement, lease agreement, and operations and maintenance agreement, and other related agreements with the Missouri Joint Municipal Electric Utility Corporations to facilitate the transfer of certain electric transmission assets to said corporation.
We did talk about this. This was back in March. And of course, we've postponed it a time or two. I was out last week, so thank you to Mr. Woodman and some of my staff to keep this moving and bring this back to you. As it turns out, or as I had mentioned at your previous meeting, we didn't have a couple of the descriptions right, or a description page correct for the assignment of easements. And as it turned out, we actually have several pages that have changed on a couple of these agreements, which Mr. Woodman has outlined in a memo. Of course, the one is the descriptions that were the assignment of easements. There's also a change on the operations and management agreement. Is that the one about the notices? No, that isn't the one about the notices. Oh, that's the one about the invoicing. There's a requirement there in that when we invoice Mudgemuck for work that we do, we invoice it in a certain way. So in other words, purchase orders, account numbers, those types of things have to line up with their way of doing business so they can collect those, or those are reimbursable items through their FERC tariff, which is very simple for us to do it that way. It's basically we're marking our information with numbers that they use for them. So when it comes due to them, it's very clean for them, and it makes it a lot easier for everybody, which is entirely understandable. We did this somewhat with Grid Alliance, or we went kind of through some of this with Grid Alliance when we originally sold the transmission assets. So it'll be real easy to do on our part. The other one was the list of the persons for notices, whether it be notices for changes or entries into the substations, or changes in the agreement, or some of the invoicing, those types of things. There's also a page change there. Otherwise, the agreements are basically as they were on the 14th of March, And so I'll be happy to answer any other questions you might have. It is staff's recommendation to pass this second reading on Council Bill 22031.
Any questions? Thank you, Doug.
Thank you.
And we'll open up the public hearing. And close the public hearing. Any further discussion? Motion to approve.
So made.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Justin North,
Yes.
Jared Giddens,
Yes.
Aaron Peterson,
Yes.
Darlene Graham.
Yes.
Amy Hookstrat,
Yes.
Sean Lucas.
Yes.
All right, move on to the resolution section, 2022-041. Whenever you're ready.
Resolution number 2022-041, a resolution of the Council of the City of Nixa authorizing the city administrator to execute a contract with Hogan's Incorporated for certain repairs to Water Tower Number 1.
Mayor, Council, the purpose of this resolution is to authorize a bid award to Hogan's Incorporated for necessary repair work to Tower 1, which is the tower located in downtown Nixa. A few months ago, the tower did develop a leak in the fill tube, which is the 6-inch tube that's located within the neck of the water tower itself. That tower was taken online till we could assess the situation. We did have a third-party vendor come in and assess the fill pipe's condition. At that time, it was determined that due to excessive corrosion, it could not be welded or repaired, but needed to be replaced. So at that point, we did bid it out. We did receive 2 bids for the necessary repair work, which is to replace that 6-inch pipe that is located within the neck of the water tower. The 2 that we did receive was from Viking Painting for $67,500, with the low bidder being to Hogan's Incorporated for $39,875. Staff is recommending that we proceed with the low bidder, Hogan's Incorporated. They have done a lot of work for the city of Nixa in the past and have always done excellent service. So we do recommend the low bid in this situation.
Any questions?
You know why there was such a huge difference in the,
I
either someone's really proud of their work or someone doesn't know how good they are.
I cannot answer that, but yeah, there was a huge disparity, but that's why I wanted to point out that we have used Hogan's Incorporated in the past on multiple occasions with great success.
It's the brilliance of the closed bid system. Yeah. They don't have any idea what the other guys bid.
Sometimes they overbid so they don't get the job.
They don't want it,
Yeah.
yeah.
Any other questions? Thank you, Travis.
Thank you.
We'll open up the public hearing. Close the public hearing. Any further discussion? Motion to approve?
So made.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you very much. Move on to 042.
Resolution number 2022-042, a resolution of the Council of the City of Nixa amending the Police Department's Law Enforcement Policy Manual.
Mayor, Council, I trust that you guys have all perused the 600-page document that I provided to you. And have any questions, I'll just answer those and we'll move on, right? So as you know, on an ongoing basis, we use Lexipol for our policy manual, and they help us by giving us updates on a continual basis. Now, most of those updates are minor and do not have any real changes to the spirit of the policies. However, there are sometimes when we have major changes to policies, typically those occur whenever there's a statutory change. There might be some changes because of litigation around the country, you know, with case law, or there may be even a federal change at the federal level that would create a situation where we have to change our policy to conform. So what you have tonight in front of you is our policy manual as a whole, and I will preemptively apologize because I had 5 specific policies that I wanted to talk to you guys about, and so what I did was I asked Drew to bring those up in a PDF, and we'll go through those because they have significant changes. And they're worth looking at individually, aside from the 600-page document. So what I'd like to start with is policy 802, records management, and I'll try to be really quick with these, and then I'll ask if you have any questions as we go through. What you'll see is there'll be some stricken language and then some additional language. Sometimes, even in this case right here, you'll see that we decided that we liked the language, so it didn't change. But the strike-throughs will help you follow along. So Drew, if you could scroll down to the very bottom of this policy. The thing that I would point out on this particular policy is use of force reporting. That's a major change for us because it is now a statutory requirement for us to report our use of force to DPS, the Missouri Department of Public Safety. And so we made that change to be in compliance with statutory law. Drew, go ahead and bring up 1,000 for me. This particular policy is recruitment and selection. Not a lot changed here, but if you would scroll down just a little, Drew, and we'll get into recruitment and selection. And I would point you to another statutory change. In this situation, we are now required to do some local, state, federal criminal history records checks. And we had been doing those anyway, but now we're statutorily required to do that. And then it also asked, Drew, if you could just scroll down just a little farther, I'm sorry. Are you at the bottom? Keep going. Right there. It also recommended a review board or selection committee as part of an assessment. And these are all things that we can do, we don't have to do. So we wanted to add that so that in the future, if we do want to go down that path, we do have the ability by policy to institute this and do a review board of potential applicants. Some jurisdictions do, some don't. Drew, if you could go to the next one. It's personnel complaints. And you can stop me at any time if you have a specific question, because I'm just trying to get through a lot of information. Okay, on this one, we did have some significant changes. If you could scroll down, Drew, you'll see some highlighted section. Okay, right there. So in here, earlier this year, we had a law officer Bill of Rights passed at the state level, and that afforded some different things to the officers as far as how we handle complaints and how we deal within those personnel complaints. They had some pretty significant changes for us. Some things we had been doing already, some things we had to adopt as far as the procedural aspect of looking into complaints and such. And here you can see that a couple things we like, so we left that the same. But if you move down a little further in the body of this, to the next section, yeah, you can see that here, what we had to change is we're moving some things into human resources, and it's being handled by human resources rather than inside the department, as far as when we're dealing with notifications and things of that nature. And then some of the stricken language here, you can see that we've pushed some of the authority down farther in the organization so that you don't have to necessarily come to the chief of police to notate something or to make something known. You can do that at a supervisor level, and then it can go up. Another thing that you'll see here when you go through this is you'll see that there's a lot of information that has to be shared with the officer as we move through these complaint processes. So for example, they're entitled to have the person's full information upon the complaint. It has to be written. Those are things that we all have to start looking at. So if you could move down just a little, Drew. And most of this comes into play with investigation when we start an actual investigation into formal complaints. There's a lot of information and timelines that are being imposed upon us now. So for example, we have to give notification to officers before we question them, the manner in which we do it, the place in which we do it, the timeline in which we complete the process now is dictated all by statute. I can tell you that I have looked at this particular document and the statute, and there's a lot of good things in there, things I like. There's some things in there that I don't personally like, but it's statutory law at this point. I'm kind of hoping that they'll come back and maybe clean this up. I can tell you that the city of St. Louis is in the process of suing the state over this because they thought they say it's an unfunded mandate, and some of the things that are being described here are required, are outside of their ability to follow. So I do intend for changes to come. I do think that they will clean this Law Officer Bill of Rights up. We'll probably see this policy change again in the future. If you could scroll down, Drew. And then finally, at the very bottom of this one, you'll see that there are some requirements as far as how we handle conclusions of things as far as the investigations go, and then their process and how they're afforded their rights as far as if there's discipline and/or termination. It spells that out. Okay, Drew, if you could go to the next one. The next one that we're going to look at had significant changes were personnel records. And I would tell you that a lot of this is akin to the Law Officer Bill of Rights to some degree, but there are a lot of changes here to be seen. Where these particular records are housed and who's responsible for them, they're kind of centralizing those records back into the police department, away from human resources. I can only tell you that that's probably a result of some things that may have occurred somewhere around the state. Where they felt like those records would be more protected within the police department, not necessarily intentionally leaked or given out without a subpoena from a judge. So they're becoming a little more protected in how we handle them. Some things are being permanently retained, such as promotions and appointments and things like that. So there's some changes to retention policy as well. Let me skim the rest of this. I've already mentioned retention in that portion. And then there's some explicit language at the very end of this one, this particular policy, dealing with internal affairs files, which I would reference back to that Law Officer Bill of Rights and how we handle those files and how they're protected within being sealed. And they have to be disciplined, or dispositioned, a certain way. Any questions? I'm not hearing any questions, so I'm just rolling. Okay, Drew, the last one. Oh, I'm sorry. Macy, good job. Okay, the last one, I will tell you that this is a agency content policy. This was one that was drafted by us. It was not a Lexapol policy, but it handles all of our employee compensation, our pay, and our overtime. If you recall, a few months ago, there was some discussion about how things were going to be changing as far as how overtime would be accrued, and whether you were going to work your actual hours work would count towards your work week and things of that nature. And it caused a little bit of dissension, I guess, amongst my staff in particular. And so some questions were raised about how we were going to accomplish that. And then that ended up changing the conversation into a couple of other things that we needed to address as far as compensation when it comes to 8s, 10s, and 12-hour shift length. And so we spent a very long time drafting this particular policy and being very explicit with that. And what I will tell you is that all the highlighted sections of this is all new content that we've either added or modified. But you can see that here we did align our policy with the city's existing policy, which is your sick and vacations and vacation hours and things of that nature would not count towards your work week. You had to work actual 40 hours before you incur overtime. However, there are specific situations when you would get guaranteed overtime, so to speak. And those specific things are listed here. So, for example, you would get guaranteed overtime if you were called back in for an emergency call. You would get guaranteed overtime if you went to court on your day off. If you were working grant that was specifically requested by the state to be paid as overtime. And then finally, we added a caveat in here as well to do double time for grant work. And so that was a result of a lot of agencies, they weren't seeing participation, and so they were trying to incentivize officers to do grant work. And what they came up with is they approached the state and said, hey, can we double the amount of time that we pay the officer? Can we do double overtime to kind of incentivize officers to do that work? They said yes, if you have it in your policy. And so we added it to the policy to give us the opportunity to do that if we want to do that. We do happen to turn back some grant funds for those things, so I'd like to get that stuff spent. This is a way to do that. Macy, if you could scroll down. We did address specifically the 8s, 10s, and 12-hour shifts when it came to our holiday pay. And our holiday pay discussion took quite a unique turn. We ended up stepping back and taking a bigger approach to that. And what we decided to do with it was you will accrue that based on your shift length. So if you were an 8-hour employee, you would accrue 8 hours of holiday for each holiday, 10s, 12s, and so forth. And then to kind of recognize the continuous operations of the police department, we looked at doing an overtime, or a bank for your holiday. So currently, what you would do is if you, let's say, for example, you had 10 holidays, 11 holidays in a year. If you get to the end of the year, you never used one. You never took one. You'd have them in a bank, and we would have to pay those out at the end of the year and zero out. It did create some situations at the end of the year and the beginning of the year where people didn't have holidays until they accrued that next one. And so we went to a bank system that we kind of modeled after Springfield Police Department, and it allows them to bank them up to 132 hours. So they can hold that bank once they reach that, they level out. They no longer get any more holiday hours until they draw that down. But it does give people the opportunity to bank that up and then have it available to them to be used. And it kind of eliminates the payout, except for if they depart the city under good terms. They get 25% of that paid out, much like vacation. And then, Macy, if you don't mind, scroll down. So that's pretty much what I was talking about there. Go down a little bit more. And then we addressed personnel hours as well. And you can see that we just accounted for the 8s, 10s, and 12-hour shifts. You do now accrue the number of hours based on your shift length. And then those are given to you at the beginning of the year, and it's a lose it or use it situation. So if you don't use it in the year, you lose it, but it does reset for the next year. And then, of course, everything we do now based on our system is in 0.25-hour increments, and so we're just saying that, and then the accrual after the 90-day period. And I think that's about all of that. So does anybody have any questions? I know the pay and compensation one was one that a lot of people had commented on and had questions about.
I guess the only thing I have, and it's not really a question towards that, but what you're showing here isn't reflective in the 616-page report. So for 1014, they're different. So I just want to make sure that if we pass it, that's reflected instead of what's actually in the report.
If you pass it, what's attached as Resolution Exhibit A is what will be adopted by council.
Okay, perfect.
So if there's a discrepancy there, we'll need to evaluate that.
Okay.
But if what's reflected in the document attached to the bill as Resolution Exhibit A is accurate, then.
Okay.
Yeah, I
That's what I'm saying.
None of the highlighted stuff is in here. None of the highlighted stuff is in here.
Yeah.
Okay, so what I'm hearing you say is that the PDF document the full does not reflect the most current ones. Okay, so we would have to have that, we would have to have these in there for these 5 policies. I apologize for that.
Yeah, it doesn't talk about the holiday or the personal hours. I know there was a lot of discussion, in the past couple of meetings when we had, I guess one in December, one in January, revolved around this. I know, I had some officers talk to me about it. I think this right here, if this is something that Chief feels comfortable with, I think this is a good, what's the word I'm looking for?
Compromise?
Compromise, there we go, thank you. A good compromise for everyone involved, so I'm happy with this.
Yeah, we put a lot of work into it, and we looked over it multiple times. We wanted to make sure and get it right. I will speak briefly about, policy, city policy versus department policy. And we had a lot of discussion about which one supersedes the other and how that was supposed to look. I can tell you that we ultimately elected to change our department policy, and so we will be following this policy once approved. And we are in the process of working on the city policies to make sure that they are up to date to the most current version, and they are saying what we want them to say as far as how we want to do business. But to fix the problem right now, the best option was to make sure that our policy reflected exactly how we wanted to do business, and then we would follow that policy.
Yep, and then as Chief said, I'll just kind of explain what our future intent is. We're going to be going through the entire personnel handbook, one line at a time. We're getting ready to start that project, but it will take us some time. But during that, we're also going to pull out some of the PD policies that probably fit better in the personnel handbook, and then look at giving Chief more control over the day-to-day operations and how those policies are written and how they're adopted. So you will see some changes in the future, but like Chief said, that this is to fix this temporarily to get it where it needs to be, but we will be bringing all of this back in the future as we go through that. So you'll see a little bit of change in philosophy there moving forward, but I believe it's the right direction. We've talked about it quite a bit, and so we'll be revisiting all this again soon.
One thing I did not cover was general orders. So by policy, I have the ability as the chief of police to issue a general order that would deviate from policy. An example of that would be face coverings. So at the beginning of the pandemic, it was against policy for you to wear a face covering. And so obviously we had to make a modification to that, and we weren't going to bring it to council and do 2 readings. So I did a general order to fix that immediately. And what we do is we take those general orders, and the ones that should be incorporated or adopted into policy, we did that here in this draft. We brought all of those general orders in, ones that needed to be absorbed. So for example, face coverings will be in the policy now. And so that we can kind of make that all cohesive at one time again. And we're not working off of a bunch of temporary orders issued by me.
Any other questions? So we should not pass this, right? Is that what you're telling me?
Evidently not.
Okay.
So a motion to postpone would be in order to the next available meeting.
Do we need to do the public hearing at this point since we already presented it?
That's up to council on that.
Okay. Any other questions for Chief? Nope. Thank you, Chief.
You're welcome.
And we'll open up the public hearing and close the public hearing, and looking for a motion to postpone to the next meeting.
I will make the motion to postpone until the next meeting.
I'll second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right. And one more. That's you. Oh, there we go.
Let's talk about water slides, Matt, come on.
He's waiting for this introduction.
Resolution number 2022-043, a resolution of the Council of the City of Nixa authorizing the city administrator to execute a contract with Safe Slide Restoration for certain improvements at the Nixa Aquatic Center.
Good evening. This is a contract with Safe Slide Wow. Let me just
Slow
start
down.
Wow. With Safe Slide Restoration to do a little bit of work on the aquatic slides, both the open flume and closed flume slides at the pool. It's something we've done in the past. It's just a quick update on those, paints them, the exterior of those slides, waxes and polishes the interiors, looks for any defects or anything that might be of trouble for those slides. We don't believe that we have any of those upon our inspections, but it's always nice to have somebody else verify that what we're seeing is accurate. And so this contract would be in the amount of $35,660. We did bid it. We sent it to 4 that we knew of, and then of course opened. We've got a couple of companies that just weren't able to accommodate the work at this time. They're so busy, one with no response and then SafeSlide. And so they're still catching up from all the COVID stuff, evidently. And so they're very busy companies at this point. This work most likely will not take place until fall. Any questions?
Any questions?
But the cost is the $35,660? Okay.
That is correct.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Matt. We will open up the public hearing. If you would like to speak to this item. And close the public hearing. Any further discussion? We like nice, pretty slides. All right, motion to approve?
I'll make the motion. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you very much. All right, move on to our new business item, paralegal discussion. Who's discussing? You discussing? He's discussing. Okay.
Good evening, Mayor, members of council. You may all recall that as part of the city's 2022 annual budget discussions, staff submitted a request to fund a full-time paralegal position. During the budget process, the consensus of council was to reevaluate the request after the first quarter of 2022, which we're approaching the end of. I'm here to report that the needs of the city in terms of legal representation have increased since that initial request. This is due to 2 considerations. First, the consolidation of the municipal court with the associate division, which was the impetus for requesting this in the first place. And second, with the promotion of Ms. Coffey to the city clerk position. Prior to Ms. Coffey's promotion, she spent a great deal of time assisting with specifically municipal prosecution items. Since her promotion, Ms. Coffey has continued to assist with the municipal prosecution duties. However, the duties of city clerk and the time required to assist fully with prosecution matters do not allow for this arrangement to be a long-term or a sustainable solution. Without assistance, the duties of the city attorney will more than likely increasingly be devoted to municipal prosecution items. Individually, these duties on their own don't take a great deal of time, but in the aggregate, with the volume of caseload that we have, they do. To put some numbers on this, the city, at the time of the writing of the memo that was submitted to you in your packet, currently has approximately 787 active prosecution cases ongoing. And another number to consider is that the docket for this Thursday's municipal court date, which at the time of the writing of the memo, shows that there are 348 individual citations that are scheduled for appearance on that day. So the reasoning for this request is summed up as an opportunity for council to determine what the priorities of the city attorney positions should be. Because if the city attorney position is devoted to municipal prosecution issues, that's less time that can be spent on some of council and staff's priorities. So there's a municipal business side of my job and the prosecution side of my job. In the past, we had a fairly good working relationship on that, where some of those duties were delegated out so that I had more time to focus on the municipal business items. So that's really the impetus for asking for this position to be funded. And then additionally, I just want to point out that the request or the need for additional legal support isn't unique to just Nixa. So some of our surrounding communities, the city of Ozark, for example, currently has 2 full-time city attorneys, as well as 2 support staff. And the city of Republic has a full-time attorney, as well as a full-time legal assistant. So with that information, staff is asking for council to consider this request and to authorize the drafting of a council bill to bring back to the full council at a later meeting to potentially fund this position for the remainder of the 2022 budget year. I'm happy to answer any questions or do any additional research or take any additional direction from the city council regarding this request.
Mayor, Council, I'll also just add that I fully support this request that Mr. Woodman's coming to council with. It's been evident over the first few months of this year that Becca has quite honestly been using a lot of her time still to assist. And it's got to the point that she's not able to, doesn't have the time that's needed or need to be afforded to her to be able to actually handle all the city clerk duties. So Cindy is still working with her and trying to get her trained, and we're just not able to get that done because of the lack of staff. So this would allow Becca to free up her time to concentrate on her duties that she should honestly be concentrating on, and would give Cindy the time to train her better as well. So I do fully support this request.
It is a bit of a joint request.
Joint request from everyone.
I just know that having you here full-time has made a huge difference to us. Our ordinances have been straightened out, so many of them you're always available to come to, which we didn't have before. Our people were part-time, so and they had, like they said, they had their own staffs to do things. You have you and Becca to do it, and people that will fill in here. I'm fully in support of us trying to get a paralegal to help you, could take some of that burden off you. I didn't realize just how many things you have to do as far as prosecuting until I saw your numbers on here, and that never crossed my mind, that you were having to do that as well. So.
And it's not to be frank, it's not the most complicated thing that I do every day. It's a court process.
Yeah.
So there's deadlines, there's filings, there's a filing system that we have to be on top of. And I mean, the judge's expectation is that we're ready to go Thursday, and there's a lot of prep time that goes into making sure we have offers for every person who's appearing, making sure we know if there's a probation or vacation hearing, that, we have all the records ready to present into evidence. So, if the volume weren't so great, it wouldn't be that big of an ask to do both. But the volume makes it such that to really do that portion of the job, more of my time would need to be devoted to that. So that's to me why this is a council priority question more than anything. Like you guys appoint me, it's your guys' decision on what you want me to focus my time on. And I'm either way, I'll do that.
Well, I fully support us doing that for you, Nick. We need to help you out as much as we can.
So is it going to be specifically a paralegal position or a legal secretary, or?
I'm asking for a paralegal. I'm not sure.
Law firm in the law office kind of concept of it, there are different levels that you can have, but.
Yes, and I think that comes down to a pay question.
Right.
As the person doing the work, I would suggest a paralegal over a legal secretary. It would be, I know, having completed the paralegal course, I am much more helpful to him now that I have that background. Not that a legal secretary couldn't learn. I had a base before I took the courses. I would recommend a paralegal and the pay that would support that.
Who would hire this position?
Well, it would have to be through the city's employment process. So under the charter, I am a direct appoint of the council, but everything else, and this is kind of a check and balance system. The council still retains, I believe, under the ordinances to hire assistant attorneys, but anything that's not an attorney would probably be hired under the city's employment processes.
Any other questions? All right, yes, I think we all agree to move forward. We all shake our heads in an up and down motion. Yeah, sounds good.
We'll bring back an ordinance.
Thank you very much. All right.
Hey.
Time for the big show.
Now that everybody's left.
Get done at the beginning as a presentation.
Should have. Let me get logged back in.
You get no walk-up music.
Don't shoot lasers at the chief's head.
I got a laser pointer. Okay. Sorry. Okay, so Public Works Liaison Report. So what I did on this, I got some input from the Public Works team on different things that are going on there. I'll go through that, and then also wanted to provide everyone with an update of our trip to DC, which was very eye-opening. All right. Okay, so first is the Water Department. As everyone in here knows, the RDE Tuscany acquisition, a lot of work included with that, so they're still working on that. I didn't really ask for time frames on that because there's just a lot of things to be done. If most of you were involved in the original conversations, you know kind of the equipment that they're working with, and so there's a lot to do there. The Norton Road Bulk Water Station. So I don't know how many of you are familiar with a bulk water station, but what this is you pull up a tank to it, and I believe it'll be credit card, debit card, and you get water. This can be used for a lot of things. I used to use them all the time with my cousin to go get water for cattle, and mainly just cattle. But contractors will be able to use that to fill up their tanks. Right now, they currently utilize the fire lines, which is kind of an issue for the city, because using a bulk water station can ensure that the water quality is maintained by eliminating the possibility of backflowing contaminants into the system. So this is really big and this is right over by the dog park, correct? It's over by that water tower. So that's another exciting thing going on. Sewer Department. Sewer improvements to Southwest Nixa for anticipated future growth and demand. This is something that we've talked about recently, turning down certain commercial developments because we don't have the system to support that over there. So it's limiting our growth, and so they're currently working on a plan to provide the needed sewer improvements to that area. Electric Department. So, the new electric line tying Tracker to Cheyenne. Currently working on increasing the power availability to the northeast quadrant of Nixa. They're working on the installation of the new electric line tying Tracker to Cheyenne. This will increase the power and reliability by providing a backfeed into that area. So, cool to everyone living in that area. The new transmission line to the southwest side of Nixa to support future growth. So this goes back to the sewer project. If we're going to increase the sewer system over there, probably going to have to increase the electrical system as well. That way we can continue to keep up with growth. And then electric vehicles and how it will impact our system. You're seeing more and more of them on the road today, but I don't think everybody's going to go out and buy an electrical car or truck. But the team's doing a lot of research on how this is going to affect our electrical system and what improvements that we can anticipate to ensure that our system is ready for an increase in demand from that. I don't have this on there, but some of the biggest issues that the electrical department has right now is really materials and pricing. I will kind of touch base on this later because it's one of the things that we discussed in DC, but the price on everything is going up, and I think we discussed a while back a transformer If a transformer, if we were to order one tomorrow, how long would it take, Doug? So, and that kind of, I mean, that was kind of the things that were going through my mind yesterday when they're talking about all these tornadoes and everything, is the big what if, because we have so much new development that requires new transformers, and then if we were to lose a lot in a tornado, it's getting a little, makes you nervous. But I'll touch base on some more of that stuff as far as supply and demand here in a little bit. Street departments. Okay, there's a lot going on there. So Truman Boulevard, we've been talking about this for a long time. It's been a very long process, but they feel that we are in the home stretch to getting a bid out for it. I'm hoping that the bid is in April or May, and then possibly completed this winter or spring of 2023. North Street improvements. Anyone who drives on North Street knows that that's something that needs to be. I mean, I take a chance every time I try to go north onto Old Castle off North Street. It's a huge project big enough that it's around $500,000 just for the engineering of it. The project is expected to be around $10 million, and I would guess that that's probably based on things kind of staying where they're at right now and not going even higher on materials. Main Street, so there are two Main Street projects there. Tracker to Highway CC, we are entering the engineering phase and shooting for construction next year. It's a $2.5 million project, and we have also advocated, and I say we like I'm involved with helping you guys, but everybody knows that I'm not. We've also advocated with MoDOT that this would be a great time to consider intersection improvements at Main and CC. They're looking at engineering options for this project and could possibly build as early as 2024. Now, the Main Street north, so Commissioner Phillips called it I-14 the other day, and I'm kind of sticking with it. I like that.
I noticed that.
So Main Street from north to I-14. This project is on the Transportation Improvement Program with OTO, and funds become available in 2023 for the engineering phase. And then the Cherry Street Stormwater. This is one of those projects that nobody talks about, but it is really needed and will have a positive impact on all residents east of Main Street from North Street to Rice in the near future. This area has always been prone to flooding, and has been the topic of many residents. And actually, I'm pretty sure someone sent me a screenshot that it was commented about on Facebook today. So, it's a multi-year project. It'll start construction this year and hopefully be completed by 2025, because there's a lot of different factors that go into a project like this, and it'll take time and money to get it done correctly. So there's those updates. Now, this was quite the experience. I learned a lot, had a good time, got to meet a lot of great people, and the partnership that Doug has developed with all of these people. I mean, it's obvious that they respect Nixa and what Nixa has done, and how we operate. And it was just it was really neat to get with all these people and, I mean, just talk to them and hear what they have to say. But we went as part of the Missouri Public Utility Alliance. They cut that off, so I'm glad I remembered. Travis actually just gave me a whole book of all these acronyms because of the first meeting that I was in, I had no clue what people were talking about. It was just sound like someone was singing the alphabet. So on this trip, this kind of lists out our priorities and positions. And so I really actually kind of have a funny story about the whole climate change thing, because we attended a class that was that 5 hours, 4 hours? And it was titled, "What is the White House doing for climate change?" And at the end, the speaker said, "So to answer your question, what are they doing? Nothing." So it was kind of, it was a really good presentation, but the ending was pretty funny. So as far as addressing climate change, what we were there for, the new legislative greenhouse gas proposals must avoid unnecessarily higher costs on end-user customers, and environmental goals must be balanced. It was kind of cool that we were talking about the broadband, because one of the main things was promoting telecommunication access. A lot of smaller areas get internet ran to that area, and then the bigger companies say, "Oh yeah, we service that area," but they only service like Walmart and the big companies, and they don't do any residential service. So it creates kind of a problem for people to get good customer service, decent internet at a decent price. So we discussed that municipal tax do I actually go through this? Okay. Municipal tax policy. What I say by we discussed this is we had meetings with people who actually have a voice in DC. And, we have to go to them so then they can go to someone else. And so we kind of just told them what our stance was and what we needed help with. And part of our group, we had Springfield City Utilities there. We had Carthage, Houston, Missouri, West Plains, Hannibal, Kirkwood, Rolla, and Nixa. And we were obviously the best. Big dogs. But so on the municipal tax policy, Congress should ensure that all energy providers can access tax incentives equally. So pretty much means that we can offer the same things as the really huge companies. So the smaller companies can continue to offer the same benefits to their end users that the big ones do. Maintaining cyber vigilance. So that was just briefly touched on, mainly because there is a good relationship there, and the current standards between federal support and us is good right now. But when you really think about cybersecurity and utilities, it's kind of scary, because that could go, if that goes bad, that's not a good thing. I mean, think of how many devices everyone in this room is using that require power. Economic policy, we were there to support federal legislation authorizing a market cap mechanism. So back whenever you were hearing on Facebook or the news about people getting $1,700 utility bills, and well, it's because their costs skyrocketed. That happened here too, but council voted and we absorbed the $2.4 million. That was extra that month instead of passing that on to our customers. Well, not everyone did that. So this kind of helps put a cap on when there's certain periods like that. They can't jump it up as much as they did. The American Rescue Plan Act. So one of the main things that we kind of did with that is, and I had to explain it to someone one day, and the best way I could explain it was, so we got all this money. So say I gave everyone in Nixa a $100 bill, but I told them you can only use that $100 bill to buy Snickers candy bars. Well, okay, day one, every place in Nixa would sell out of Snickers. And so then we'd have to wait for, the next delivery, which say it's a week. So the next delivery comes in, and now that 99-cent Snicker is $1.99. And then they sell out. And then a week later, they get another shipment, and now those are $3.99. But then you have some people who still haven't got to get their Snickers candy bar, so they're sitting there with money that they can't do anything with. Well, kind of having the similar situation, because even though we get this money to do different things and all the things that we had talked and planned for, well, the prices on all that stuff went up. So we're not gonna be able to get as much as we could have if the prices would have been, you know, where they were. You know, one example in Houston, Missouri, they were buying conduit for fiber, and it's actually ordered out of a company in Missouri. And it was 33 cents a foot, and the lead time was, what, a month? And then the last time he placed his order, it was 47 weeks out, and it's now 93 cents a foot. So that's a problem. So one of the main things, it's not that everyone's asking for more money, it's asking for a longer time frame. And because if we know now that we have till 2028 to use it, we can plan accordingly. But it has to be used by 2026. And it's one of those deals, chances are it might get extended, but they'll tell us probably 2 months prior. And so you can't really plan for that. So, very interesting, especially the one day where so here's kind of just an idea. This was, so everyone who said you guys went and partied and all that stuff, that was not at all what happened, trust me. I have a screenshot of, we walked like 8 miles one day in dress shoes. So this was just this isn't even a full day, this is just what got us to lunch. We got to meet with a lot of people. I mean, it was a jam-packed day. And, nice little picture there. I figured I'd show a little bit of pictures showing that we actually did go.
It's not the place next to the hotel?
We did not go to the place next to the hotel, no, we did not. So that was that. Honestly, that day was a lot of fun. Just a quick story on this. Staffer comes in and sits down with us, and he probably was really young, maybe a year older than Justin. But he was just sitting there, and I mean, everyone was just throwing things at him, and he was just looking around, not writing notes or anything. And then someone asked him if he had any questions for us, and I mean, he pretty much just read back everything that everyone had said to him, and I had forgot we even asked him some of those questions, and it was impressive. And we did let Travis go out with us at night. We figured it was a nice thing to do. That was at the public power reception thing we went to. And this is the group from Missouri. We presented Roy Blunt with an award for, what was the award?
It was the MPUA's annual Public Service Award.
There you go. And it was nice talking to him as well. He listened and cared, which was nice. We did get an afternoon where we actually got to put on sneakers and go walk. And it was an interesting time to be in DC for sure. With the protesting, and the truck convoy was on its way, and we were there the day they lifted the mask ordinance, which was possibly the funniest thing ever. Because, I mean, people were scraping windows and just getting every sign off of everything. And it was pretty cool. I think that is it. So really, thanks to all of you guys who provided me additional information to help me do that. My goal was I remember watching Mr. Perryman present this last year, and I was a little nervous because he did an amazing job. So hopefully I did half as well as he did. There's just so much information that goes on that nobody cares about until it affects them, and then everyone cares about it. So thanks to those guys for everything they do, and I probably, no offense to the other departments, but I probably have one of the coolest liaison jobs here. So, thank you.
All right. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Giddens. All right. Anything else from staff?
Yeah, Mayor, Council, just a reminder, the Home Rule Charter Review Committee meets for the first time tomorrow night. It'll just be an introductory night, the elect officers, just to get to know each other and kind of understand what a home rule charter is, and then we'll start getting into work on reviewing the charter. And then also, reminder, council workshop on the 22nd.
I was going to remind everybody, we have our annual Easter egg hunt Friday evening at 6 o'clock. We're serving hot dogs and chips and things, thanks to Walmart. And the Easter egg hunt is sponsored by McDonald. So I hope to see you guys out there as well.
Anything else? Senior division? All right, anything else from council? I'll take a motion to adjourn.
So made.
Nobody else wants to do it. All in favor?